Back to class. That's not right. That's not how the song goes. It's back to life. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, it's been a long couple weeks. Sam's back in the room with me, so it's back to normal-ish in a world that isn't normal at all right now. We're Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostinagreement.com. While you're there, Voter Guide 23 will eventually show up. I'm really struggling to give a shit about this city race right now, but we'll go into that at some point. Go to your favorite podcast provider, give us a like and follow and 5-star review, whatever else you can do to help us spread the word. Tell your friends about us. Yeah, that's all the announcements I have for the front end of the show. So we're going to let the intro play out, and then me and Sam are going to chat about some stuff.
Hey.
What's happening, buddy?
Oh, not much.
Well, cool. Mm-hmm. Missed you last week. I subbed the kids in for you, and I apologize. I should have at least run that by you for before I did it, but we got some interesting stuff out of the kids.
Nice. That's what it's all about.
My favorite of what I wish we would have had a chance to talk about last week was this whole crazy sub thing.
Sub thing?
Yeah,
don't know what you're talking about.
The Seagate underwater tourism company who sent a couple of billionaires down to look at the Titanic, and
are you calling it a substitute?
The sub
thing? Sorry, sub thing. I was thinking you were talking about substitute teachers. I was like, I don't know.
Because I threw it around in our chat a little bit because I'm astounded. Like, again, I understand that people don't like rich people and stuff like that, and that's fine. I'm not saying you should like rich people, you shouldn't, but people die. I just don't. I'm not okay with the celebration of people dying. Like, they deserve it, those fucking assholes. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm not going to be excited about it either. You know. Yeah. And they took the risk. Like, I don't feel bad for them per se. I kind of feel bad for some of their families. They're going to miss their family and stuff like that. That sucks. But you know, they took a risk. They didn't do their due diligence. Apparently, anybody in the sub industry was screaming at the top of their lungs that this is a bad idea.
Right.
And they're like, no, I got the money. It'll be fine. I'm rich enough. It won't happen. No, it still can happen. So, but but like everybody's like dogging the owner of the company because he was in it and died too. But dogging the owner that was like, basically talking about how like regulation and guidelines and stuff like that are stifling innovation. And his stuff isn't within proper whatever because he's got more innovative processes, which is apparently bullshit, but whatever. He did that and he took the risk and he died for it.
Yeah, I was more astounded that it was even a thing. I was like, wait, there's companies that'll take you to the Titanic?
Obviously not. They'll just take you about halfway down and kill you. But
we don't know how far down they made it.
Well, the Navy came out and said that they were pretty sure they heard it happen.
Yeah, on like Sunday or something.
Right. It was the first day of the thing, and it was like it was at the same moment that they lost contact with like the surface crew or whatever lost contact.
Right.
And so the from Navy intelligence, they're like, yeah, that thing, as soon as they lost contact, that thing imploded. We heard it. But they didn't, but they let everybody go out there and look for it, even though they're pretty sure they heard it.
Right.
Which I thought that was kind of weird too. But, I don't know. I just like, it's weird. It's kind of dumb. But again, like the amount of celebration I saw, and apparently I think you're right. I think I have some shitty people in my Facebook feed. The amount of celebration of a rich person's death was really I was really off put by it. There was a couple of good like bad joke memes that I was like, that's pretty funny. It's terrible, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's just like, why? Like, okay, that's what you get. Okay, that's enough. You don't need to go past that. But you deserve it. I don't know. It's just it just kind of made me kind of sad. And so, but I did see somebody like a journalist had written a piece on it, and it was kind of, it's like one of the things that I think people I think myself included are kind of discounting from this conversation is that that is a level of distaste in the gap that's a reality. That income gap, that wealth gap thing that we all talk about all the time.
Yeah.
That the lower classes are starting to get past the point of my life sucks to fuck you, my life sucks. to those people who can do stupid shit like drop $250,000 on a one-way trip to death. But then the other one too that bothered me is like everybody's like, you don't go to, it's a graveyard, not a tourist destination. It's like we do that all the time as a species. Like, what are the pyramids?
I mean, they were originally built to be a monument to that ruler at the time.
I mean, it's a headstone. It's a giant fucking headstone. It's a big one.
I don't know if all the pyramids have. Well, yeah.
They used to. None of them have anything in them anymore. Yeah. All the stuff's either been looted by museums, which is, I guess, technically a different term. But I just think it's weird. Like that was the like of the attempts at a serious take. That was the one that I just like. It was like, no, you're just wrong on that one. People would go like, I mean, people do pilgrimages to what's his face from the Doors,
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison's graveyard or grave in Paris. Yeah. People talk about how cool the New Orleans cemeteries are, and people go and just walk around the New Orleans cemeteries because they're all above ground because of sea level issues and this, that, and the other. Like cemeteries are tourist spots. They just are.
I don't think it's for the reasons that you're kind of portraying it as. I mean, people go there to kind of memorialize that person. That's
sometimes. I mean, okay, the Morrison one maybe, but nobody's going to the pyramids because they thought Tutankhamun was a good guy that they really want to memorialize and remember how awesome that person was.
Well, no, they go there to see the pyramids. It's not in any kind of aspect of death.
Okay, but I think I'll bet you that there is like New Orleans guided cemetery tours for people that don't have family in there. It's nobody that they know. It's just check out these cool cemeteries. We're going to show you the coolest plots in here. So it's not memorializing the people that are in there. It's just checking it out because it's a cool, different version of a cemetery that we're not used to seeing.
Some of it's just that old, or just the architecture that was used.
Right. And so it's a tourist spot. It's not, you're not going there because you have family or friends, or you're memorializing the people that are there.
Well, some people just want to go through a graveyard walk as like a pseudo ghost tour bullshit.
Right. But the point being is that there is a touristy aspect to some. Not all graveyards. Not everybody's. Let's say people don't go over here to the Veterans Memorial Cemetery next to Lakeshore and.
No, I think one of the reasons of like the one they do at Old Gray is they have headstones there from like 150 years ago or so.
Yeah, I did see going back to that conversation we had a couple weeks ago about that weird ass situation with a couple of cemeteries up in Mechanicsville. Remember that story?
No.
So like most graveyards, non-military, non-state graveyards it's a private business. It's a private piece of land. Somebody buys it. Does whatever they have to do with zoning.
Okay, you're talking about nobody wanted to buy it or whatever.
Right, and so these two of the companies that owned them went bankrupt like 30, 40 years ago. And so like if you go in KGIS and look them up, like it says blah, blah, blah company owns this property, but that company doesn't exist anymore. And so nobody owns it, and it's tax defunct, like they haven't paid their taxes in 20 years. But the city doesn't want to confiscate it for tax reasons because then they have to clean it up and take care of it. And so they're just sitting there. Anyway, the only reason I bring that up is I was driving through there the other day, and I noticed that there's people out there cleaning it up. They were mowing and weed whacking and stuff. I'm assuming it's some volunteer group that was doing it or something like that. But
not too uncommon. It's nice to see that.
It's big. I didn't realize how big it was. Like, it's funny. I've driven by it a bunch of times and never thought about it. And the Compass guys were talking about it. And I was like, do I know where that is? Off of Keith Avenue? I was like, I feel like I know where that is. And it's just kind of
if I've ever noticed it.
It's kind of a back way to sneak from this end of town to the north end of downtown or like Fountain City without having to get on the interstates. Kind of weave through like Middlebrook and Paper Mill, and you can sneak back there, take the Liberty Street over the interstate. Actually, Liberty Street basically dead ends at Keith, and you take a right on Keith and it goes to Western.
Okay.
And that's the stretch between Liberty and Western. Is where these two cemeteries are. There's another cemetery there, but that one's still functional. Anyway, that was just a fun update on that story that I just happened to notice because I happened to drive by while the guys were out there working. I almost stopped. Like it crossed my mind. Like as I drove by, I was like, I should stop and ask them who they are. Not being weird, but like, hey, there was some talk about the situation with the cemetery and stuff. Like, do you live in the neighborhood and you're just tired of looking at it, or are you part of an organization that's trying to get this to look nicer because it is a historical site here in Knoxville and blah, blah, blah. Right. Going back, though, like people go to Gettysburg all the time. There's a lot of dead bodies there. It's a battlefield, but
Right.
people go to see where all the death happened. People go to Auschwitz. Oh no, they demolished Auschwitz.
You're just stuck on this.
I am stuck on that. So move on. Supreme Court had a bunch of big decisions this
No,
week.
they're just stuck on this idea of like death tourism.
I just like it bothered that like there's a couple there's the celebration of anybody's death bothered me about it, and then the bad example of why it was a bad idea. Like that one stuck with me because it's just I don't know, it just stuck with me because it was just a bad take, and I feel like it should be dismantled because it was a bad take.
Yeah, they interviewed one guy that had gone on the sub before, and I guess he had kind of shopped around, and most places were like $500,000, but this was one company that was offering to do it for like $150,000. But he said, they were in like this like tiny like cramped sub, and I found it astounding that even if there was like bad weather, like you didn't get your money back. Like you signed off on this thing that like even the money that you paid, if we get out there and the weather's bad for like a day or two, then sorry, you don't get your
can't do it.
$150,000 back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the weird thing about it though. If you could drop $150,000 on, you can drop 300 or 400. And I would think if there was even like an emoticum, even like a little scratch in the back of your head, that's just like this doesn't seem right. That other one looked like a whole lot more like real.
Right.
I'd drop that extra $300,000.
Yeah, I mean, I saw like the way it looked, and I'm like, that doesn't.
Apparently, Mr. Beast got invited, and he's like, nope. Like they tried to get Mr. Beast to come do like an episode, on it, and he was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be comfortable with it either.
That'd have been a tragedy. Wonder if people would have celebrated his death.
I don't think you're in like a full size sub, but this is like a small sub. That
I mean, I know I couldn't do it.
looks
for
a bit
1,000
rinky dink anyway.
Yeah. I got into a full size U.S. Marine or U.S. Navy sub, and I was uncomfortable, and it was on the surface.
That's one thing I would trust to go down to that depth, but something that small,
yeah,
you're cramming like 10 people in there or whatever.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I think it's tragic and it's a bummer, but at the same time, I don't feel bad. I just so people died. That sucks. But also, they took the risk knowingly, especially the owner of the company, because he was talking about knowing that you got to take some risks to innovate and be on the cutting edge. You got to be a risk taker. It's like, well, you took the risk and you paid for it.
Took a risk to try to make a lot of money.
Right. And that's what happened. And sometimes it goes well and you move on. Sometimes it doesn't. So, anyway, do we got something to say?
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure one reason why the sub sank is because instead of using like actual buttons or something like
Oh, the joystick thing? An Xbox controller?
They use like a $12 Xbox controller.
I don't see that. Like, I didn't think that was that weird.
Yeah, apparently
honestly.
there was like a picture that came out that I saw that got debunked of like a picture of some kind of controller on the bottom of the ocean.
I don't think
here's the
that's-
controller we found.
I don't think that's that weird, though, as a...
Well, no, yeah, I did hear that it was like what was used to maneuver the sub was like a cheap Logitech controller.
I still don't think that's that weird.
I think it's definitely weird.
I mean, I think it's a little bit... I think if you're trying to sell like a high-end, high-dollar thing and you're using it, that looks bad. But, I mean, realistically, like what are you controlling? You got these different, motors and fans and pumps and all this different stuff. I mean,
it's the one thing that's supposed to maneuver you back up to the surface. I mean, why would you want to have something that works?
Okay, so do you know what fly-by-wire is?
I know the concept of it.
Okay, well, like airplanes, all commercial airplanes nowadays, for weight issues, they do what's called fly-by-wire. Like old school airplanes used to be, you pulled the yoke back or pushed it forward. There were cables and rods and stuff that moved the flaps up and down, and the whatever the thing on the tail that goes left or right is called. I can't remember. Rudder, yeah. Those kind of things, like, and it was all like cables and pulleys and all that kind of stuff. That's how you used to fly planes because they didn't have the technology. No, that's fly-by-wire. Everything in that cockpit, all the buttons and switches and knobs and whatever, all they do is put input into a computer that sends it through wires throughout the plane to make the things do what they're supposed to do. For all intents and purposes, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Not intensive purposes, intents and purposes. For all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. So you have a yoke, you have a joystick.
Right.
I remember when I got into computers when I was a kid, like I dropped a bunch of money on like a really nice Logitech joystick. Like it was a full it was like supposed to be like a flight stick from like a helicopter. Like It was the same kind of idea, and it had like weighted springs and pulleys and stuff in it. So like when you let go, it pushed back Like it rested back into its zero position automatically and all that kind of stuff. And wasn't. I mean, a couple $100, maybe $100 back in 2099, something like that. So it wasn't cheap per se, but it wasn't expensive either. But like the design of that thing was to be a copy of what like an Apache helicopter was using at the same time.
Yeah.
Which functionally, is it as quality as the one in a helicopter? Honestly, I don't know.
Really? You're not sure?
I'm not sure.
If it's much better, like this is probably about as good as what they really have.
Like in my mindset at the time, then I was like, yeah, this is like so cheap compared to what they've got in the military. But at the same time, like we were talking about the last couple of times we've had shows, talking about how some of these contractors are undercutting and overpricing, and like what's there's the it's a great line. It's from like Neil Armstrong or one of the old school astronauts, and he's like, just remember, like he was telling some new guys, like, just remember, you're getting on there, and everything on there was made by the lowest bidder. And it was just kind of the punchline of, this is a government project, and so yes, this is the most technologically advanced thing on the planet, this rocket ship you're getting into, but every component was made by the lowest bidder.
Not necessarily.
I mean, as long as it hits spec, then I would say yes, very likely. I would hope not. I would hope they're not going to pay more for the same spec because they like company A more than they like company B, because
They'd just like the design more.
Yeah. I don't know. It depends what the spec differences are, I suppose. What the differences are other than spec.
Right.
Like if the spec is it needs to do Operation A, and it does Operation A, but this one looks cooler, I don't know. I guess you could spend more for it.
I can't remember what they would say, like with the lunar module, like, what we landed on the moon with for the first time had less technology than, what's in, like, smartphones, basically.
What's in dumb phones that we have anymore. I mean, really,
dumb phones, yes.
I mean, you could get a flip phone. You can get one of them consumer cellular grandma phones, and it's got more power than the original computers on some of them.
Jitterbug.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. But anyway, so we had some big Supreme Court cases. I guess I'm confused. I thought they said that they overturned the Texas court decision on stopping student aid forgiveness, but I guess they're just blocking the Biden student loan forgiveness program altogether.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking you were talking about the other one.
Which other one? Well, I do want to talk about the other one, but but then the White House came out and said something about, okay, fine, the Supreme Court did this, we'll figure out a different way to try to get to what we're doing. And so that one's still kind of in flux.
I guess there was 3 different ones, I think, that I've read.
Yeah, there's a handful this week that were pretty major ones. That being one of them, the affirmative action one. And there was one, and the Colorado website case, which is the replay of the Oregon cake case, essentially.
Yeah. Then there was the mailman in Pennsylvania about not wanting to work on Sundays for religious exemptions. Which it's still kind of weird in, like, I think the way it was worded. As far as it's basically like, businesses should make some kind of religious accommodations outside of, like, extraneous, like, effort that it would take to, if there was like an extra cost or like an extraneous amount of cost. So it still leaves like some weird like wiggle room in there.
I don't get the premise in the first place. Like, so this is one of those things about employment at large that I don't get. It's like this idea. It's like, okay, you can have the day off. I'm not paying you. What's the problem? I want you to pay me for the day off.
They were saying, I guess it was when, of course, there's always been a little bit of a shortage of mail carriers for the USPS.
Right. And thanks to Amazon, they're running Sundays pretty regularly now.
And that's exactly what it was. Is they want them to run on Sundays to, I think specifically for the major thing, to deliver Amazon packages.
I think that's all they do. They don't deliver regular mail. Like, I've gotten Amazon stuff on Sunday, but I don't get regular mail on Sunday.
Huh. Yeah, they were always saying he had to work that. But then I guess he tried to sue them for, religious exemption, basically. They were like, no, it's going to cause us, undue amount of harm. I guess they didn't have enough people.
Right. We can't run the routes we need to run to keep the contract with Amazon satisfied, and if we don't, right. there's probably a financial.
I think he was like a rural carrier, so it adds a little bit of credence to, like, there's nobody else. Like, you're the one of 2 people we have that runs this route for all week long.
I mean, I guess to me, like, I don't know. Like, what is the issue that they don't have enough mail carrier? Like, it gets into greater economic, like, individual business and economic issues. Would be my argument against it. Like, to me, I don't know. I think the employment is supposed to be a mutual agreement. You know, you come to work for me, I will pay you X for the amount of time you're here, or I'll pay you X a year for you to do a certain set of tasks, whatever the agreement is. And in exchange, you do the things that I need you to do for the job that I hire you for. You know, to me, it feels like we've gotten to this mindset that it's not anymore. And especially right now with how tight the job market is and how many places are hiring, you know, like that's why, you know, some of these Amazon and Starbucks unions were able to pull off what they did. It's because the labor market's so tight, and Starbucks knows they need employees, and so they need to change their agreement. Their mutual agreement's not good enough for their staff anymore, meaning it's not a mutual agreement anymore. It's what Starbucks wants, but it's not what their staff wants. So they made the adjustment as much as they didn't want to, and as hard as they could to fight against the unionized issues, but they eventually succumbed to it because they had to, because they knew they needed the employees. That's the power of the employee, again, on what was supposed to be a mutual agreement in the first place. Now, I agree that a lot of companies don't act like that anymore. You're a pawn that does what you're told when you're told to do it, and I don't like that. I think that's a problem. But the idea that the government needs to be part of it, I think, is weird too. Because I think
there's just no real, recourse above it. I mean, once you're up to the CEO level, when you're trying to ask for an agreement, CEO says no. I mean,
right, and then so we can't come to an agreement, so we don't work together anymore.
Right.
And the management or the ownership or whatever it is has to make the decision. Say, is it more valuable to us to keep you as an employee with the demands that you're putting out, or can we find somebody else? And it sounds to me like the post office can't find anybody else. And so what they, you know, if they're that desperate for employees, they need to be like, yeah, we really need you to work Sundays. But if that's an issue for you, we need you the other 5 days of the week more than we need you just Sunday. So keep working and we'll figure out how to get these Sundays covered. That'd be the thought process I think I would have. Yeah. Because if it's a red line for you, then you should quit. And the question is, why don't you think you can just quit? Because if you have to have Sundays off, because that's a religious important thing to you, that's good. That's fine. If that's what you want to do. If that's a red line and you refuse to work Sundays, and I make you work a Sunday as your boss, then you should quit. Or tell the boss that says, if you make me work Sundays, I'm going to quit. And if they say, well, then quit.
I mean, it's just because there was that kind of religious exemption in like a federal labor standards or whatever that opened up, I guess, that had that kind of caveat of being able to bring legal recourse for it.
Yeah, I just think, but to me, like you shouldn't need a religious exemption at all. It should just be your decision as an individual working for me.
All right.
You know, but the idea that the government needs to step in to ensure that, because essentially what he's doing, and I don't know the case particularly, but essentially what's happening is I want to keep my job, but I don't want to do this one thing that my job wants me to do.
Right.
And he's using a religious exemption as the argument, which I'm not saying isn't true. I'm just saying I want to keep my job except for this part of my job.
Right.
Instead of saying to the boss, I want to keep my job, but I don't want to do that, and it's important to me, and the boss relenting because, well, we want to keep you. If the boss doesn't relent, then you quit. And again, it's a rural route. He may not have many other job opportunities out there, but I don't know how to answer that part of the question.
Right. Well, I think that along with the website decorator case, I think it kind of opens up a door to a gray area of kind of quote unquote religious exemption. And then are we only recognizing,
right, which
quote unquote recognized religions? Yeah.
Right. So I don't think
I create my own that has its own rules that then, I have my own.
But see,
religion
I'm on the same kind of mindset on that one, is that it's not that you need to have you don't the idea that you could be compelled to do anything is legally problematic to me.
Yeah.
For any reason. You don't have to have a reason. Like I was like, we got the bar open and we got new bartenders, people that never bartended before in their life, or maybe bartended some other places, and one of them asked me, it's like, so what do we do if some pregnant lady comes in and tries to order a drink? So you do whatever you want to do. But what you don't do is tell them you're not serving them because they're pregnant. And they're like, what? I was like, you can serve them or not. That's up to you. We don't have a policy on that. But if you decide not to serve them because they're pregnant, you don't say it. Because if you say it, that opens us up to lawsuit. That is a discriminatory factor by law. Which is ridiculous to me, Because the reality is, and the truth of the way you should do it in any circumstance, regardless of what your reason is, if you're a bartender and you cut somebody off because they're drunk already, or because you don't want to serve them because they're pregnant, or their ID is real but it doesn't look right to you and you're not comfortable with it, don't serve them. And when they say, "Why aren't you going to serve me?" I'm not comfortable serving you. But the idea that I have to train staff on the legal way to answer things instead of just being like, just don't serve them. I don't care. Like I told them, I was like, I'll back you up. If I find out in hindsight that you didn't serve them because they're a black dude, then you're fired. But at the time, if you say, "I'm not serving you because I'm not comfortable," and they come yelling at me because I'm the boss, and I say, "Well, my bartender's not comfortable serving you," I'm not going to make them, because I'm not going to compel them to do something they're uncomfortable with. And they going back to the website thing, like the idea that this website designer needs legal protections to refuse service is just dumb. I think the reason they're refusing service is dumb too, don't get me wrong. But I think on the legal standard of it, the idea that I need protection from the government because I don't want to do something. I don't want to do that. I don't care if it's a good reason or not. I just don't want to do it. It seems ridiculous to me that I need a legal protection for that.
Right.
Like, I don't want to walk my dog 2 miles every day. Well, you have a dog. The government says you have to walk your dog 2 miles a day. That seems ridiculous.
All right, and that's where I wonder, in some of the cases of how I guess the victim in the lawsuit has said that they've been denied this specifically because they, were a non-heterosexual couple or whatever. So I don't see how the web designer wasn't able to just lie and be like, "Yep, I'm too busy right now. No thanks."
Well, I mean, it's what this one and the cake one were intentional. The LGBT community, whatever, when whatever law came into place, they were sending people out to test the law, and that's how they found the baker who finally refused it. They were trying to test the law. It wasn't there's no other baker in town and we're getting married and we need a cake. It's we're trying to find a baker that's not going to serve us because of our sexuality. And the Colorado case is the inverse. It's the web designer themselves who is saying publicly that they're going to do this thing because the website isn't even live. They're not even in business. This whole thing was created to test the law, to get to where it is this week, and to get this Supreme Court decision on it.
Wait.
Like it's so like so apparently it's the phrase of the night. For all intents and purposes, this website's never actually going to work. They're never actually going to do the job. It was literally just to test the law. Which again, that happens all the time, constantly. Like there was the drag ban that we had. There was a group out in Memphis that intentionally did stuff to test the law on the Tennessee drag ban.
After it got passed?
Right. It was passed. Everybody knew how it was going to work, and they went out and did whatever they had to do intentionally. I think it was a club owner who was like, "Well, I'm not going 21 and up. I'm an all ages club, but I'm going to hold drag shows." And so they went through this whole thing with intent to test the law, which it went to the state Supreme Court and got struck down.
For the same reason why it got rebutted initially was because it was very vague. Even
right. But
was their decision of this was a very poorly written
It's
law.
a common practice to do these kind of things. Like, I mean, the Dobbs decision was an intentional case. Like, it wasn't a natural case, the Dobbs decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. It was a case that was conjured by, I think it was the Mississippi Attorney General or something like that.
Don't know much about it.
I can't remember, but it started in a way because they knew it was one of those cases that would get pushed up to the Supreme Court, and it would force this Supreme Court to make said decision, and they thought that this would be the Supreme Court to do it. Yeah. Like the point is it's not an uncommon occurrence that these Supreme Court cases are not really real cases of people against people. It's a test that people are putting out to see what it is, because then they can act accordingly.
We'll have to find the episode. I'm reluctant to bring it up because I don't remember the specifics of it, but there was some kind of crazy, as far as like privacy thing, that came about of like police like entering a domicile. And they ended up like walking in on like two guys that were in the middle of making love. and then, but I want to say, it went like the ACLU or someone that was basically they were looking basically for a case that they could bring to, I guess, kind of point out this aspect of kind of like a search and seizure, kind of Fifth Amendment type thing. Was it fourth or fifth? Fourth or fifth, I don't know. But they're basically trying to find a case, and the two guys were pretty much like reluctant. They're like, I don't really want anything to do with this. Like, I don't want to be like known for this case.
Right. I'm happy to pay the fine and go about my life and not be the poster child.
Like one person like already had another partner, so it was just kind of like this like in and out type thing. It wasn't two guys who really liked each other. It was just kind of like some little fling, and they were like, we don't want to be like the face of this case, basically.
Right. Yeah, that one you shared with me.
It was basically like lawyers that wanted to. They're like, hey, we've been looking for, specific case to be able to like argue this aspect of police illegally coming into a home.
Right, because that was the big thing with the student loan forgiveness one. The Republicans who hated the idea of it and were trying to fight it and couldn't block it and this, that, and the other, they were trying to find a defendant. Like, who is harmed by nobody paying their student loans off?
Yeah.
Because the way student loans work is the government guarantees them, which means the government will pay the lender. So if you're a lender, you're getting paid. Where's the harm? And so they found some company in Texas that did something like that basically said, well, if all of them go default and the government pays them all off for us, then we'd have to lay everybody off because we're out of business because we don't have any more loans to manage. And that was their argument for harm. But the one you shared with me was really cool. That was really interesting.
I'm glad you listened to it.
PodSave.
I was like, this is really interesting.
Well, I mean, I think like it was very like it was very perfectly set up. It's like these are some names that you don't know, and this may be one of the most pivotal Supreme Court decisions in the end of time. Because that was one of the ones that was going on this week too. Is about the state sovereignty or whatever with voting as far as federal voting rights,
independent state legislatures,
right? Because I would consider myself a federalist. Argumentatively, I would like the states to. The rule as I understand it is if it's not, explicitly stated in the Constitution, then it is the decision of the states to do with as they wish. It is not the federal government's responsibility to make and create law around every single possible issue across the country and make it uniform for all 50 states. And so, I'm a fan of that premise. And so that case, which I wish I could remember any of the details right now. But that case being basically, that was the guy had a fucking panic attack about.
Baker versus Carr, I think.
Yeah, it's like the panic attack about, it's like, because a great, another good news story for Tennessee. But he's like, morally speaking, what the Tennessee state legislature was doing at the time was wrong. And by every metric, it was like was it 23-1? Was that what they said?
Yeah, something crazy like that.
It was like, so if you lived in a urban area, you had 23 people per legislator, and if you lived out in the country, you had one. It was a 1-to-1 ratio essentially. So for every 23 people that lived in cities, one person in the rural areas had a representative. You had one representative per 23 people. So you had 1/23 of a representative if you were in a major city, which all are Democrats or whatever Republicans. I don't remember how it was back in the day.
Right.
And so it's like morally this is totally wrong, but this opens a door that I don't want to open. And it does put a very interesting little caveat on things. Like I thought it was I would have been very interesting if they got some real top level people that understand the way the world works as far as law and all that kind of stuff goes. If that decision would have gone the other way, how things would be different now. Because I agree, like I wholeheartedly agree with the guy that had the panic attack. Like I get it. Like it is not right. It is not okay the way Tennessee is treating their citizens electorally. Like they should. This is not fair voting practices of this state. But if we intercede on this, what was it? What was the policy they kept talking about, or the doctrine? It was like the anti-politics doctrine Basically, they wouldn't make a decision on something that was purely politics. And
Right.
what's more politics than voting?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, but and it's like it was so it was clearly like he was clearly stuck in it, and I 100% see where he's coming from on it. The right thing to do was to intercede and make Tennessee change their voting laws because it was inappropriate what they were doing. But it opened the door to completely changing the way we interact with the Supreme Court as a nation, and opened it up to a lot of the things that I don't think the Supreme Court should be dealing with. Like I don't I think the abortion one's an easy one. I think the Roe decision and the Dobbs decision, for that matter. If it is something that the federal government wants to make a law on, they need to make a law on it. And if they're incapable of making the law on it, then it needs to go to the 10th Amendment, which rolls it back to the states, get to choose how they do it. Like I think the way that it is now is actually correct legally. I think it's wrong the way Tennessee has addressed it, but I think it's correct legally. And if the federal government can't pass a law on abortions nationwide, then it's up to the states to deal with that how they wish to deal with it. I think that's how it's supposed to be. So, anyway, that's my rant on that. Again, on the it's one of those I get stuck on because on the moral, logical, correct versus the legal, it's two different things.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that people lose in arguments. Like the moral has to be right all the time. It's like, well, maybe we need to vote better. I mean, if you want to get down to it, like how do we keep doing this? Like you can only locally speaking, you can only argue gerrymandering so much. Like, if you ask anybody that I talk to regularly at least on the remote left of the Knoxville political spectrum, Jason Zachary is an evil, murderous bastard. But he keeps getting elected.
Murderous.
Yeah, he's not killing babies by having them born or killing moms by making them carry to term, whatever. Like he is if you talk to if the people that I talk to on the left in this town think Zachary is like the incarnation of an evil. I won't say Satan because they're on the left and they probably don't believe in God and whatever. I'm just a joke. It's a joke, people. Relax. But he keeps getting elected. It's like, why does he keep getting elected? Same thing we talked about last time. Because the tip-top issues of what gets the most people agitated are not the tip-top issues of what most people get agitated about. Because like I said, I don't think people care that much about schools. I really don't. I think there are some people that care a whole lot. But I think on an electorate spectrum, it is.
That's what I was saying. Like that was one rebuttal I think I sent you after our last episode when you were going over that. Then why do politicians talk on those points?
Because they don't get held to account anyway. They never get held to account. Yeah, I care about our schools. What do you mean you care about our schools? What are you going to do about it?
Well, then it at least sounds good to most of the people that are, I guess, registered to vote from their polling perspective.
So if you lived in 89 in Knox County, if you're a Knox County resident, you have kids in schools, and you live in District 89 where you're voting for Zachary, or where Zachary or whoever he's running against him, which a couple times says nobody's running against him. But and he comes up there, and you're looking at him, and he's talking about schools, and he's talking about fiscal responsibility, and he's talking about God and guns and country or whatever the fuck he's talking about, and that's resonating with you. You're like, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want to see out of my state legislature. You voted him in. Schools suck. That's part of the reason you said it. He's like, he's talking about schools. I want schools to get better. He says he wants schools to get better too. I'm going to vote for him. Schools still suck. He keeps saying things about schools, but he doesn't do anything about schools.
Okay.
And then he runs again, and you vote for him again? Because he still keeps saying nice things about schools and doesn't do anything about it?
No, my hang-up is that I don't see why their, PR team would basically have them make these talking points about education if it wasn't something that they thought the people that vote for that person that they think is going to reelect that person would then trigger them to also reelect that person.
Right, because I think they know that people aren't going to actually pay attention to the brass tacks of it. I think they know that people aren't going to understand the specifics of what this new law that affects our school system do and don't do. I think the writers, the political gurus that are helping run campaigns, I think they tell them to talk about schools because they know that the people that are going to hear about it, that's all they're going to hear.
Talking point if it wasn't something they thought would be a trigger point for these people.
I agree.
It's not a trigger point unless it's something that actually matters to them.
Right, but it doesn't. I don't think it does actually matter to them because if it did, then they would notice that they voted for this guy and nothing changed on that topic. or got worse on that topic. But then they vote for him again.
I mean, I can write that off as just a general campaign promise that most people assume is never going to come to fruition.
But again, but then I don't. Then why? I guess that's why a ton of people don't vote. Then it's like, what's the point? They're gonna they promise the moon. And they're not going to give us anything anyway.
I'm sure that's part of a reason why a lot of people don't vote.
But that's what I'm saying, though. It's like, to me, a logical person would say, "Okay, Mr. Zachary, you're running for this office. What are top priorities to you?" And he says, "Schools and guns and protecting children from the evils of whatever and this, that, and the other." And you say, "Cool, I agree with those things."
All right. Most people just don't follow the schools, so don't think
That's
that it's going bad. And they're like, "Oh, he said he was going to fix schools. I haven't heard about schools falling apart."
Well,
so
I mean, you had some guy try to blow up Hardin
okay.
Valley, but whatever. I'm just saying, that's a stupid little aside. I apologize.
Right.
But I'm just saying, I would say I would be at least, and maybe this is an echo chamber issue for me because the groups that I'm in Facebook on that are school groups are really angry all the time. And you would think that buildings are falling down if you sat in that group for too long. That we're sending kids in and the lights don't work and the faucets leak and there's rats and cockroaches running all over the place. Not only physically, but in the structure of the school as a whole. They're not teaching them anything. It's just a babysitting thing and blah, 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 blah. That's how they talk about it. And they're a politically active group. But they can't ever get their people elected because Zachary beats them every time. And to me, to me, it begs the question: the people who vote, what do you actually care about? What do people actually care about? Because I think it's fair to throw out the non-voters in this part of the conversation. Not that your voice doesn't matter, but you choose not to use it, so you can not use it here either. But it's like what I think most people who vote, their priority is their own bottom line. In Knox County, at least. I think, and most of those people vote right because what the right, quote unquote, says that they stand for. And they don't even do that well either, but they do it better than Democrats do as far as financial stuffs. I want my property value to go up. I want not to pay more taxes. I want, these kind of things. I don't care about infrastructure. I think that's the reality. It's the only thing that makes sense. Because we complain about the roads and the traffic here all the time. And we suck at it, and they don't do a good job fixing it, both state or county.
But hey, we've got plans that may come to fruition in 10 or 15 years.
Right, and I think we're
working towards it.
I think that's part of the game. You get in there and you promise the things. It's like, yeah, we started this 15-year project to repave this 2 miles of North Shore. This shit up here has been driving me fucking crazy. At Morel and between.
Yeah, I had fun trying to go around it the other day.
It's a fucking shit show. They've done some of the dumbest. I get it, but they've done some of the dumbest closure points.
Yeah, I made the gamble trying to go down it the other day, and I was like, "What the fuck?" It actually had me going through your neighborhood when I was trying to come up Nubbins Ridge.
Yep, lots of people. We've had a lot of cars running through here.
I was like, I was gonna wait. I think it says it's still closed that way. Fuck. I just want to go get some food.
Yeah, there was a stretch of time where the actual intersection of Nubbin Ridge and Morel was completely closed, and then there was a bunch of time where it was only going Nubbin Ridge and you couldn't go on Morel.
Yeah,
but they kept putting the fucking road closure up here at North Shore and Morel.
Right.
And it's like, well, how the fuck do I get into my neighborhood, friend?
Go around.
We pushed through the sign one day. We actually ran into it.
Well, it does say no through traffic.
Right, but they put the fucking road closed sign right in the middle of the lane, so you couldn't get around it for local traffic without going into the donut shop.
I saw it that way a couple times. I actually thought about moving it when I saw people going around it. I was like, fuck it. That was before I saw that it said, I thought it was just a straight up road closed, and I kept seeing people go around it. And I wanted to actually move it to block the road. I'm like, it's fucking closed.
And actually, no, that one just says road closed. That when it was up, it just said road closed. It didn't say to through traffic. It just said road closed, period. That was part of the fucking shit show. Anyway, my point is, I don't think we trust our governments in general to actually get anything done. And if that's your general mindset, then you vote for the person that's going to take the least money out of your wallet. I think that's the general priority for most people in Knox County.
Okay.
I mean, I think the stats play that out.
Who do they think gets stuff done?
Nobody. I think that's why.
Nobody gets anything done.
I think that's part of the argument on why everybody's like. That's at least part of the argument on why Tennessee has become such a landing point for so many people moving in from other states. Is that if
because we get stuff done here?
No.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But the state I left doesn't get anything done either, and they charge me 3 times as much in taxes, and my house costs 5 times as much for half the house. I can buy 10 times the house for the same amount of money in Tennessee, and have none of the stuff that the government is going to do anyway, just like I do here or there. It doesn't matter. My dollar goes way farther in Tennessee, so I'm going to go there. I don't know how else to explain it. You got a better idea?
No.
I just think that's what it seems like in a very lay outlook on this whole thing.
No, we do definitely have lower property tax, but I don't think it's necessarily a viewpoint of they're charging me more and I'm not getting as much out of it, so I'm going to go somewhere else that's going to charge me less and get less.
Get the same nothing out of it. Yeah. That's my assumption for people that are leaving their places is that I can get way more for my dollar, and like physically way more in a house and grocery store kind of shit.
Right.
But I think the other part is that the services that my government offers me are shit. So I'm going to go somewhere else and get shit government services and just pay less for them.
Sure.
I don't know. That's
sure. Everyone, most people have just that fatalistic outlook upon how the country and cities and states are run. Everyone has.
No,
that.
I don't think most people.
Yeah.
I think
most people have just given
I think
up.
the majority of people in Knox County feel that way because I think that's why they vote the way they vote.
How's that?
I think they vote for the Republicans. That's why that's why Democrats don't win countywide races in Knox County, because the Republicans are the ones that are going to charge you less for nothing instead of the Democrats who are going to charge you more and still give you nothing. That's the argument. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that that's the stance.
Okay, sure.
How do you explain it?
Okay. I mean, how does that line up with the logic of you live in the city, you're paying extra taxes, yet the city still votes more Democratic on average? So those people are paying more taxes, yet still vote democratically. You think those same people that even have the money to live in city boundaries to pay that extra added cost of extra taxes?
I mean,
they still vote Democratic.
They justify it because they have fire and trash pickup. They pay. They're paying for fire and trash pickup. I don't know. I'd be curious to do the math. I bet it's probably pretty close. If you pay for trash pickup and fire coverage from Euro Metro in the county, it's probably fairly close to the extra taxes you pay in the city.
Yeah. Do you get anything else living in the city? I don't know.
Yeah.
Outside of just trash and fire, essentially.
I mean, that's always the big one. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sure that. I mean, there's other you get city parks, but county residents go and do city parks all the time.
Right.
But city residents use county parks all the time too. That's kind of a. I mean, I'm still we've been at this for what, almost 3 years now. I'm still I still think Metro is the right answer. I don't want it, but I think it's the right answer. I think that me and where you live and where I live are a perfect example of why Metro makes sense. Because I'm paying less than half in property tax for almost everything that a city resident gets, other than trash and fire. And hell, sometimes I get fire anyway. City will show up here every once in a while for different shit.
Is that much of a disparity in property tax?
City just went up last year by like a penny on the $100. I can't remember how the math works out, but essentially for a while there it was the same. It was county tax and city tax are almost the same percentage on your property value. Now the city tax is a little bit higher percentage than county, but it's only like 0.05% or something more, or 0.1% more. So if you're paying $500 a year, and if you live in the city and your taxes come out for county at $500 a year, your city version of that tax is like $600. It's at least as much. It's at least 2 times. It's at least the same plus. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
I mean, if you're like I think my county property tax is like $1,200 a year, about $100 a month, give or take. If I lived 5 houses over, everything else being the same, my county tax would be $1,200 a month. My city, or $100 a month. My city tax would be like $110, $120 a month on top of. So I'd be paying $220 a month in taxes, give or take. And so actually probably not. So going back to that earlier thought, no. Rural metro and trash pickup are not as much as the difference in taxes, for sure. I want to say rural metro is not cheap, but trash was like $75, or it was like $300 a year. It was like $75 a quarter or something like that.
It depends on the contract you sign.
Right, depends on the trash company. Whether I do Ward Waste or somebody else.
Right.
This episode not brought to you by Kyle Ward's company.
Yeah, but the amount of like contract time that you sign, you're like, hey, I'll go ahead and I'll sign
or if you pay by the year or you pay by the quarter.
Right.
Yeah, those kind of things. But I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, it's not that trash pickup's not that expensive. But I still think Metro's the right answer.
I wonder if they do like the bullshit that cable companies do, where you got to like rent the box. If you have like rent the
trash can.
Rent the trash can.
I would
assume so, because you don't get to keep that shit if you cancel.
I don't know if they do it. I would do it if I'm Kyle. If I was Kyle Ward and I own Ward Waste Management, I would go to what are the other ones?
Waste Management.
Right, Waste Management, and there's like 4 or so. I would go and I would sit down and I'd talk to those guys and be like, hey, look, I'm running this neighborhood route every Tuesday. You've got how many cans on that? You're getting X number of dollars per can a week or whatever the pickup is. I'll pick up your cans in that neighborhood. And you can pay me 70% of what they're paying you to pick up. And I'll be in the neighborhood anyway. Like, you figure out the math, because they got to pay when they go to the dump and dump it, they got to pay their tonnage and all that kind of shit. You do the math, but I'd figure it out and be like, hey, let's just run one truck through the neighborhood once a week. I'll do it let's rotate weeks. I don't give a shit. Let's just figure out a way to do it. Because it's going to be cheaper for you in the long run.
Is that not collusion?
It's absolutely collusion.
Okay, gotcha. But it's cool. It's cool collusion.
I mean, it doesn't mean you can't do it.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't think. I mean, I don't. I think if you set it up that it's like that. So if you're Waste Management, and I'm Ward Waste Services, and I said, hey, I got 10 cans in this neighborhood, and you got 50. I'll pay you $5 a can to pick up my cans while you're in the neighborhood. And I'm collecting $10 a can from the customers. I think that'd be something that it does sound dirty. I don't know. That'd be a good question for a lawyer.
So I say it may only cross the line to get into like kind of fixing prices.
Well, but you would naturally end up fixing prices if you're doing that, because you're going to do it in a way where, like, why would you?
Okay, I'll pick up your extra cans, but you just throw me a little bit per month for my added cost, fuel cost.
Right, but the inverse be like the eventuality of that would be, well, I'm going to charge $100 a month because you're charging $100 a month, because that way our little behind the scenes exchange is equitable for us, and so we might not talk about fixing prices, but we're going to end up naturally fixing prices. Because it's in our both of our best interests if we're doing this behind the scenes deal. I don't know. It'd be an interesting little tidbit. I still think I'd try it. I don't think, I don't know. Because then I don't know. Because then the other side of it would be if I'm Ward and you're the other, and I make a deal where you're going to pay me $5 a can to pick up this whole neighborhood. When I'm doing it, I'm going to be putting stickers on their trash cans saying change to Ward Waste Services and get 10% off, and then I'm going to catch the difference when you change over to me. And then I'm going to be doing the whole neighborhood anyway and making a little bit more.
Right.
Which would still be, I don't know, that's a fun game. Like, if they're actually being competitive about it, I'm good with it.
Let's see if you could get those companies to want to get along. I mean, essentially, they're
don't
competitors. I mean, it could be advantageous for them to work together, but there's not much incentive for them to work together.
Well, there is, and there is until there isn't. It depends on how you play the game. Like, my little scheme of putting my stickers on their cans and saying switch to me. One, would piss them off, and they'd probably quit our contract. But two, if you do start switching over, then the inverse happens elsewhere. And so I think the natural competition would go away because you would want to keep the status quo. I think that'd be the reality of it. If you were to start doing that. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'm curious now. I'm trying to think of what else is going on locally. Canada wildfires have been showing up. That's been fun.
Is that why it looks hazy here?
Yeah.
It's weird how it shifts. You know, the last time it happened, like a week or two ago, it was all pretty much like the Northeast. But then I've seen with the most recent one, they kind of mentioned Chicago,
I guess the jet
and
stream
Detroit.
dropped down.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, it was noticeable. Like, I mean, it was.
Yeah, I was wondering if like the haziness here was part of that, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was very like. The missus was mentioned that like some of the lightning bugs came out early because it was significantly darker at like 4:00 as opposed to like 7:38 when they usually start coming out.
I swear I saw something about like lightning bugs. Like a lot of them like died off because of something. Like the population has decreased for whatever reason.
It hasn't been as exciting this year as it's been in the past. I'll agree with that. In my anecdotal,
Are we still early in it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
She's the pro. Like she's super pro. She loves it. She gets out there and she'll get 4 or 5 jars full in one night.
For a lot of people that have been disappointed at how I guess the Smokies or whoever, like the kind of famous Firefly tours that go on, have gotten like so popular that, you know, it's damn near trying to like find like a Taylor Swift ticket.
Well, I mean, it's a raffle now,
Right. Yeah.
which I mean, I don't know. I'd rather have that. Like, I'd rather have that and have enjoyable access to it than terrible access to it because you have a million people all squeezing in the same spot. But what else is happening? They're renaming Cleveland's Dome. Hear about that one?
Did see that?
Don't know if they're actually going to do it.
I
It's weird.
I think they approved it a day or two ago. Like the
County
city
did.
Or county
Yeah, but that's just they approved to write a letter, basically.
to the National Park Service or something.
Yeah. There's I can't. It's not the National Park. It's a department of the National Park Service, but it's like the naming whatever. I can't remember how that whole thing works, but it's literally just the county commission is writing a letter to the National Park Service to rename a mountain that's not in the county from which the letter was written. But it starts the process, and you know whatever.
Did see apparently the federal grant they applied for the pedestrian bridge.
Yeah,
got declined.
It doesn't matter. They're doing it anyway. Don't worry about it.
That's what
It's
Kim
gonna
Cannon basically already said. She's like, yeah, we're still going through with it.
Which, you know, going back to that city taxes thing, that's why I'm glad I don't pay city taxes. Fuck UT. That's fucking bullshit. Like that, and there's because I mean, literally, that bridge is going to lead into that entertainment district they want to build.
Right.
So literally, they're going to take Southside property, which is going to take it off the tax rolls, to put student housing and apartments in. That's not student housing and whatever. But I mean, I don't know. Again, the University of Tennessee is making actions in a profit-rearing enterprise as a profit-rearing enterprise. They're openly saying it. We are doing this as a way to raise money. So they are acting as a profit. Like, I don't know. Technically speaking, do you think? I mean, they're a department of the state, so they're not a nonprofit either. Technically, I mean, they're a division of the state. It's not like a Helen Ross McNabb. They're not a nonprofit organization. They're a division of the state. But this division of the state is actively seeking out a profit-rearing enterprise. And, you know, the same way everybody got all bent out of shape about the city and the county helping in any way, shape, or form with this private industry, it's the same fucking guy, I guess, which just totally makes sense. But, you know, this private guy's baseball stadium project, this is the same thing to me. Just because UT's name's on it, fuck them. The state of Tennessee can pay for it. Those tax dollars they take from me can pay for it. But the Knox County tax dollars, that's fucking bullshit. That's trash. They're going to do it, and we're going to say, okay. Even though, you know, the city, and again, this goes back to like a lot of shit we've talked about. It's like, you know, as much as people try to write off some of the arguments made by Eric Whiter, he's like, you know, and some of the Republican candidates for that city council run back in 21, you know, and I mean, even Matt Shears has said it when he's been in here. It's like, you know, the city is perfectly financially stable. It's not that big a deal. Well, you say that, and then in a non-election year, they raise taxes. And then on the election year, they don't raise taxes. And so why did they raise taxes? Because they needed it to pay for what they wanted to do. And it's like, well, okay, yes, they're still financially stable, but you had candidates running on that we don't need to raise taxes and stuff like that, and then they got elected, and then they passed a tax raise. And so they're building a stadium that's coming out of city tax dollars. They're going to build this fucking bridge that's going to come out of city tax dollars. And it's going to keep rolling down that hill. And it's like, okay, this is why I vote Republican more than not. It's like, at least rhetorically, I'm not in the city, so I don't get to vote for city races or whatever. But, rhetorically speaking, and I mean, again, Kyle Ward, my county commissioner, he voted in favor of the stadium project. And, but rhetorically, Republicans are against the idea, but they do it anyway. But at least if you're going to take Kyle versus Todd at the time, I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. It wasn't a conversation point at that point in time. I'm curious what Todd would have thought about the stadium project. I need to ask him. Because I don't think it's a good way to spend our money, but they're going to do it. They're going to do this fucking bridge.
Well, I think I got to forget that the bridge was kind of part of the original thing, going back to revitalizing the South Side.
They've been talking about it. I mean, apparently, Scott or Jesse had mentioned it a couple weeks ago, which I'm sure it's going to be a topic. We're taping tomorrow, so it's a little bit out of whack because I usually tape with them earlier today. I'm sure it's going to be a topic on their show this week. Is that grant got denied? And it's like, what's most interesting to me, if you want to get down to the taxes and money spent thing, it's like the city of Knoxville spent $100,000 and something on a company, on a private, on hiring somebody to write that grant that got denied. It's like, well, is there any recourse for that? Can we get our money back? How does that work? We wrote the grant. Well, you failed to do a good job to get it for us. So I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying it's a weird. It's like there's a lot of those weird isms to me. It goes into there's this new super PAC, not super PAC, just PAC. That's it's a Tennessee-wide PAC, but it's a centrist PAC, is what they call it. Have you heard about this at all?
I don't think so.
It's a local lawyer here, whom, when the abortion stuff was really kicking up here in the state, when the Dobbs thing was starting to do its thing, she's basically quit her law firm to start this PAC, and it's kind of like, I actually text Justin Cornett from For All Tennessee. I was like, have you heard of these people? You probably want to touch base with them. There's some issues. Some of their top issues are probably not stuff that guys are going to do, but there's probably some issues that you guys will line up on, and you might want to get together. Basically, they're doing the same thing as For All is. It's a different version of a lobby group, and they call themselves centrist, which is true-ish, I guess, because their top issues are reproductive rights. Because I agree with it essentially, because what the Tennessee right has done is way right, and what the Tennessee left would do if they had the majority that the Tennessee right currently does is way left, and what their reproductive rights stance is center of those two things. And I think that's one of those things too, because last week's show, Jesse was out of town, and so it was just Scott and me in here, and so I was a little bit more active in the show than I normally am. And I actually interrupted and was like, it sounds like, they're labeling themselves centrist, but their top three issues are stuff that I would hear directly out of Gloria Johnson's mouth. And he was like, yeah, because that's Gloria's compromise position because of how far right the right is taking it. Yeah. Now, if Gloria had her say in it, she would go further. But, it's Medicare, the Medicare changes that the Medicare, Medicaid that the federal government has offered and Tennessee won't take.
Not sure.
It's Medicaid expansion. It's been a political talking point. It's like the left is always like, we want to go get this Medicaid expansion. The federal government says it's ours. If we want it, we need to go take it. Where, again, if Gloria or Sam McKenzie or whatever that had their full agenda at play, they would be like a single payer or socialized healthcare universally. But their compromise position is taking this Medicare expansion.
Gotcha.
Where the right is like, we're not taking shit from anybody. We don't want to do any of that kind of shit. And so, It's interesting. Like, I'm curious. I'm going to try to get a hold of this lawyer lady who's starting it, because I'm curious. Because at least the top 3 points to me is stuff that I like when I talk to Gloria, when I talk to Virginia Couch, when I talk to any of the left state-run candidates that are running for the state from the left. These are what their talking points are. Because, frankly, Matt Shears is he's just a better operative than Randy or what's his face? I forgot his name. Randy's replacement.
Daniel. That's
Herrera. Yeah, who's not there anymore either.
That's what I was going to say.
In that they're getting the talking points out of what is the center, because the center is so far left of where the right is right now. And so politically speaking, it's good strategy on the left's part. It's dishonest in the sense that if they had their way, they would go over here. But they don't say that out loud because they don't need to, because the middle is way far left of where we are right now anyway.
It's necessarily dishonest. I would view it as more realistic than with anything. There's going to have to be a compromise.
Well,
so you
right.
put out what you're actually willing to do. Like,
well, no, because it brings to me is that next time when I start doing interviews, and I've done it a few times. Like, I'm trying to remember who I've done it on. It's like, if you had your way, if you had the control, how would you do it?
Right.
Because I can't remember who because I remember talking to somebody about it, and I can't remember what the issue was.
Great Rolling Stone said you can't always get what you want.
Sure, but I'm just saying, like, I can't remember what. I think it was abortion. I can't remember who I was talking to about it, but it might have been Amanda Collins. But I can't remember exactly. But it was, it was all the more centered version of, like a 16, 20-week ban, something like that. And it's like, I was like, yeah, I hear you saying that, but is that what you want, or is that what you would settle for? But I don't hear anybody ask that question, which I'm dumb enough to ask. That's always my joke when I'm interviewing these people. It's like, I'm dumb enough to ask questions that a lot of people have, but nobody's willing to answer because they don't want to look stupid. Or nobody's willing to ask because they don't want to look stupid asking the question. It's like, so, like, next time I have Gloria, and I might be like, hey, you've talked about this Medicaid expansion thing. Is that what you want, or is that a step in the direction of where you want to go? Because I think that's an important distinction. But it also, part of the problem is there's no candidate that runs centrist. Because you have a Gloria Johnson against a Posabut. And Posabut was like the quintessential current right candidate against Gloria Johnson. And it's like, well, where's my center candidate that actually Medicare or the Medicaid expansion is all they want? They don't want more than that. They don't want a universal health care. They don't want a single payer system. They don't want nothing. But they want something in the middle. Those candidates don't exist. Well, they do. They just don't get anywhere in the system.
All right, but even like, the quote-unquote Medicare for all, I don't think you could make that a state law.
No. But you could.
That's not even.
You could.
It shouldn't even be a political talking point.
It wouldn't be Medicare for all, but you could have. Like, I think. I don't know. It'd be a good question for the lawyer. I think a state, if they wanted to, could put a single payer or a statewide socialized medicine system in place. The problem is nobody wants to do it. It's not a good idea as a state, because then everybody's going to, like, if Tennessee were to put some sort of social medicine system in, then everybody from Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia would come up here, use the services, and go back home.
All right.
And so it would not be advantageous to do it that way. That if that is a goal for you or whatever. But at the same time, this idea of the county commission is writing a letter to change the name of Cleveland's Dome. Well, if the state legislature is urging the federal government to put a single payer system in place or a Medicare for all system in place, that has more weight than me or you asking for that. So do I want to put a candidate in that is going to ask for that or not ask for that? Is it going to a legislature of a state that might actually have a consensus letter going out, or just a few people that are there? Because I think that theoretically could make a little bit of a difference. But what's your thoughts on the affirmative action Supreme Court case? That's the one I wanted to talk about, too. We were talking about Supreme Court cases, and then we wandered off.
I'm kind of torn on it.
I'm a little confused on the specifics, The way I understand it, actually, let's go that way. Well, how do you understand what's changing from what's going on?
That's what I'm not really sure if I even understand that either.
Exactly. The way I gather,
I mean, but most of what I've read is that it's not specifically just race-based, but race does have a factor in what higher-level educations do look at in the vetting process.
My gathering of it is that if the University of Tennessee, statewide, says that they want to have a minimum of X percent of a certain ethnic group as part of their campus population, they can't do that anymore.
Right.
Well, they can, but they can't do it by asking that question on the application process. So they can't say, well, okay, well, we're only at 9%. We need 100 more black kids to get us to 10%.
Right.
So the next 100 applications that have black kids on them, we're going to take them. They can't say that. They would have to do it. Their explanation of why they accepted kid A, B, or C cannot include race as one of the reasons.
Right.
Which I think makes total fucking sense.
It's not something they do anyway. They don't give explanation as to why they do or don't admit someone.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those I don't know how this practically works. That's part of my problem with it. Like, I get the overall premise to me. It says, like, you should take the kids that you think have the best ability to. I mean, really, because again, UT is open about being a properly rated enterprise. What UT wants is they want kids to come be students, whether it's finish their undergrad or get a master's or get a doctorate or whatever. But they want them to be continuously donating back to the school. They want kids to go make money out in the real world and donate some of that money back to the school in the process. And so they want successful people that have the disposable income to throw $100,000 back at their university to get club-level tickets or whatever for UT games or whatever the fucking bullshit is in that whole process.
I'd say at a certain level, yeah.
They want, for their, well, and even taking out that dirty version of it in a more regular version of it, they want the ability to go and say, hey, you want to come be a student with us? We're going to charge X number of dollars a year in tuition. And you're going to pay that because look at the stats. All the stats say if you come and get this degree from us, you're going to go out and do this. So even in a more like practical, less immoral version of the idea of the sales that UT does is, hey, come be a student with us because when you get a degree in this major from this university, people see that on your resume and they're going to hire you.
Yeah.
And you're going to go out there and you're going to work and you're going to make some real money. Whether you give some of that back to us or not, wink, 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 that's to the side. But we can justify charging this much for tuition because you're going to get your money's worth.
Yeah.
That's what UT's really after. And so again, why would race be a part of that conversation in the process anyway? If you're on the admissions board, I don't care. I want the kids that are going to go out and make money so we can keep our stats up that says, look, you come here and you make more.
Right. It's a bit of a difficult, I guess, kind of quandary in the fact that, the whole affirmative action came about to, in a sense, force colleges to then start admitting minorities that typically were not admitted. Which, some would argue, who was that? I think Geraldo Rivera just came out. Apparently he just got canned by Fox. But came out and basically said, like, he wouldn't have the career that he had, had it not been for affirmative action at that time. And people pushing for, colleges admitting more Latinos in his case.
I mean, it's an interesting. I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem of how do you fix.
It's one thing in trying to force, but then also try to kind of almost forcefully encourage colleges to then start admitting other minorities when colleges are like, no, we're just picking the top of the crop.
Like I've said it before. I think,
but they've also focused on Ivy League colleges, which most people point out have an issue of what are they called? Legacy admittance, basically. You basically saying, like, I had an uncle and a grandfather that went to this school, so I should be admitted because it's a family tradition for me to go to this school.
Right. Well, it's because the reality is
It's
it's because
like,
your
okay,
uncle and grandfather have been donating back their entire lives.
Yeah, and there's that behind the
And-
scenes of
Right. I mean, I think
Or I mean, I've heard of straight up cases to where it was actually pretty crazy. And one of my exes like had a, I think it was a cousin that their parents bought like or I think they pledged to build like $1 million like school or a building at a school, and then their child didn't get admitted, and then I think they pretty much like just took it back.
I mean, again, I guess I mean the easy way, the easiest, dumbest, and I know I always go into business economics bullshit. It's like, what are you selling? Like, if you're a university, what are you selling?
Right.
And I acknowledge that it gets a little bit more complicated when you're a public university, like UT. Is Harvard a public school?
Yeah.
Is it the University of Mass? Is it UMass Harvard?
It's a public school. I don't think it's considered a private school.
I know that's a very.
I think they call it an Ivy League school just with the tradition of it.
Technically, that's their division, and that's their conference in football and other sports. Like you have Southeastern Conference, you have Ivy League, it's a conference, yeah. But I mean, it's got its own little thing. But that's good. I don't know. I don't know if Princeton is the University of New Jersey, Princeton, or if it's Princeton. Because Vandy's not Ivy League, but
I don't
it's
think
up
it's
there.
considered a state school, but I don't think just because it's a state school doesn't necessarily mean it's.
I think it does. I mean, like
public. Just
Vandy
because
is a private school. It's a private university.
Huh.
I believe.
I mean, I don't know.
It's privately owned. They don't get state funding.
Is it just one or the other? Either a state or a public school?
I think so.
Okay.
Like, what do you get state funding or not? I mean, that's really what the difference is.
Vandy gets no state funding?
I don't know. It's a good question. Does Harvard get state funding from Massachusetts? Do they get federal funding? Like, do they get?
Probably.
I mean, a grant is different. Like,
Right.
I'm saying, like dedicated state funding. Like the state budget includes X number of dollars for the University of Tennessee. Right. That happens here. I don't know that the state budget includes X number of dollars for Vanderbilt or Crown College or Mississippi State.
Right.
Even though it is says it's a state. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are on that. It's a good question.
Yeah.
But like, DeVry or whatever the fucking.
Right. But I think a part of the issue and why it's got kicked up to the Supreme Court is because these Ivy League schools. I think this main one was pretty much Harvard and like UNC Chapel Hill. I think were like the two main colleges that were a part of that lawsuit that went up to the Supreme Court. A lot because those are very highly selective schools. So
which they should be as highly selective as they want to be because they because that's it to me. It's like
right.
If you can go to Harvard, whether you pay for it out of pocket or you get a scholarship or you got some legacy cool shit, but at the end of the day, to me, it's supposed to be at least like that's the idea is that I have a degree from Harvard.
Right.
That means more than having a degree from Vanderbilt or the University of Tennessee in Knoxville or DeVry College.
Vandy's still a very respectable school.
I agree.
I mean,
I'm just saying
they're damn near an Ivy League college.
But if 4 kids walk in and you don't know anything about them other than they had the same GPA at Harvard, Vandy, or UT,
right.
You're going to pick the Harvard kid.
Right. They have that air of
right. That's what you're selling. You're selling the ambiance. You're selling the legacy of that school.
Right.
And so if in the economics model of it is if that's what you're selling, then that's your focus. Your focus is I don't care who you are. You need to come to my school, do well at my school, go out into the real world, make a ton of fucking money, look good,
right,
behave well, all those kind of things. Because when you succeed, that makes us look good. So the next generation we can sell, we could sell tuition to.
Right. But at the same time, a part of that, admissions program is they take that thought into consideration when they're trying to find a diversified, community of a class.
But what value is that to them?
What value is it to them?
Right. In the model of our graduates do good work and create
right
money. In the financial economics model of it,
money.
Our graduates. If you hire one of our graduates, they're going to do good work for you, right. Or they're going to go out and they're going to start their own business, and that business is going to succeed.
Right.
what does diversity matter if that's your model?
Because on average, the level of diversity increases levels of success. You're not just because you went to a class of
Is that
brown-haired people. Once you go into the workforce and you're not around that many like brown-haired people, like, oh shit, what the fuck?
I'm not saying,
because you're exposed to, I mean, culturally you're exposed to that many more just kind of different thoughts, different frames of knowledge.
but does that make you?
Does that make you? I would agree. Yes.
That makes you a more well-rounded person. Sure, I'll agree with that. But does that make you a better employee, or does that make you a better business person or creator?
I would argue yes.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not.
And some of the. I'm trying to remember like what kind of like congressional hearings they had, but they basically had like military coming in. I think when there was this kind of like GOP pushback on like diversity in the military and other, I guess, like federal institutions. And they had these, high-ranking military officials coming in basically saying, they're like, I absolutely am all for diversity. Like, these people do need to learn how to work with, and that's how we have a stronger military. It's because we are, encouraging different viewpoints, different frames of reference. Because you're able to then learn from each other.
I mean, I don't disagree with that part, but it's like, that's a very tough one.
I mean, a college is preparing people to...
A fucking grunt is a grunt.
To interact
in a... shoot somebody. Like, that's a weird one in the military one for me. I'm sorry. I'm not disagreeing
I think
with
they
this.
were doing it more so with, like... I think it was in the frame of reference of, like, military institutes as far as, like, military colleges.
Right. So it would be officer class plus.
Yeah.
Right. Because, but that makes sense because you're going out there and you're going to lead a group of people who is a diverse group of people. And if you have zero concept of how to deal with diversity
right.
and you have a diverse squad that you're overseeing, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, realistically, depending on what the workforce is that you go do from Harvard or whatever, you're going to have a diverse workforce too. And I get that makes sense. I'm not trying to disagree like wholesale with this. I'm just saying
right.
like when you look at it in a more numerical, statistical format, you don't care about those things. You care about success in the monetary format because that's what you're reselling in the next generation of tuitions.
Right, but even in the college admissions, they don't just look at, your SAT scores. I mean, like, oh, your score is this, you're in. They're looking at all sorts of, they're looking at, the essay that you wrote to get in. They do look at background, but, the amount of community service hours that are supposed to look better upon your
right, but that's just like to me that's just like it's
right. But they're not looking at just merits of your educational value.
But that's part of the machine at work. It's that because when you go to your guidance counselor when you're a sophomore and they're like, well, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I want to go to Harvard and do this. It's like, well, if you're going to Harvard, you got to get these kind of grades, and they want to see this kind of stuff on your essay, and they want to see community service hours, and they want to see you in these clubs, and they want to see this, that, and the other.
Right.
Now, I don't know. It's chicken or the egg, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is, well, okay, yes, they look at those things, but now that we know they look at those things, we're preparing accordingly.
Right.
And so that doesn't change you say yes because you're told to say yes. It's not because it's the right answer. Like one of my dad's great jokes, one of my dad's greatest jokes. So there's this company and they're hiring a new accountant. Their accountant retires and they're trying to hire a new accountant, and they're got a whole, bunch of resumes in, and they call these people in and they're like, hey, come give an interview. They sit down for the interview, ask a bunch of questions, get to the end of the interview. It's like, okay, last question. What's 2 + 2? Guy answers 4. It's like, cool, thanks. We'll give you a call. Next guy comes in, asks a bunch of questions. They talk for a little while. Last question. What's 2 + 2? 4. Great. Thanks for coming in. We'll give you a call. A couple weeks later, another interview comes in, sits down, asks him a bunch of questions, gets to the end of the interview, says, hey, one last question, and then we're going to wrap this up. What's 2 + 2? The candidate answers, well, what do you want it to equal? When can you start? Love that joke. It's one of my favorite dad jokes. Dad jokes, accounting, statistics, good shit. point being, I forgot. Like I totally forgot my point on that.
Cool.
Made sense. So anyway, you guys listen will understand.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. No, I mean the point of anyway. What else is going on? What else have you seen?
Locally.
I mean, summer slows down. There's not a lot going on as much.
Yeah.
We'll grind out stuff.
So France is going crazy right now over some protests.
Which one? What are they protesting about now?
Basically kind of like a George Floyd incident.
No.
Of a teenager that got shot and killed by police.
Do you remember, have you watched the, not Top Gear, the Grand Tour? Have you seen all the Grand Tours?
No.
They did a Grand Tour when they were in France. And you know how like they set up a race. I don't remember what the race was, but they had a bunch of like French cars and they're racing. And they just like had a bunch of running jokes about the way the French people protest. Which actually one of them was interesting because it's actually true. Like some of the shit they make up because that's what the show does. But apparently France was trying to put in speed cameras in a bunch of places.
Yeah.
And like the day they all went live, a bunch of people that were protesting against them went out to all the spots and just destroyed them. Like painted over the lenses, but like all of them in the entirety of like a bunch of different subregions of France.
Yeah.
Like all at the same time. It's like the French know how to protest. They get after that shit.
Yeah.
And so the joke was they were doing this race, and it's like they start the race, and it's like, oh, the whatever union of track workers is protesting right now, and so they like pull over to the side of the racetrack, and all the like flag people and whatever are rioting and throwing fucking smoke bombs and shit, and they sit there and they go, okay, protest is over, and then they start the race again. But
France has definitely had their share of protests. They had a
after
big one of like the rail workers, basically. Because we're all
it was like the Yellow
unionized.
Jackets or whatever was all their cabbies. That was the last big. Well, that one and the
that
retirement age one.
Right.
Like, those are two big ones that they've done recently. Okay,
I thought the yellow vest was like their metro workers, basically, like their
I thought it was like public transit in general.
yeah
that
public
included-
transit, yeah, basically,
that included cabbies and shit like that. I don't remember
Probably.
exactly what it was, but have you like how much have you been following the whole Sudoku, the Wagner Group thing?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, there's still a lot of questions to it. 'Cause apparently they weren't too far outside of Moscow before all of a sudden they turned around.
220 kilometers, which my speedometer says is about 110 miles or so, 100 miles.
Maybe.
Like the speedometer has both, so it's like
Yeah.
that's how I do my
Right.
how I do my math.
I gotta hop in my car and look at my
I'll
speedometer.
look at this thing real quick.
But I mean, they've had a couple like tips kind of leading into it.
Yeah, I mean, this guy apparently had no problem saying this is some like complaining about at least the military apparatus of Russia because he was a hired gun for them, and he's like, "Well, I'm working for you, and you ain't giving me what I need."
Right. Yeah, that was what happened before. It was basically, we're trying to fight this war for you guys, and you're not giving us ammunition.
Right. Which I've also heard some reports that said that he got tons of ammunition and just kept it all,
Yeah.
and was like stockpiling it with intent of this thing.
Huh.
I'm still really confused on the Belarus part of the equation because it's like, well, the premier of Belarus or whatever negotiated his stopping
Exile.
from this thing and then coming to Belarus, but Belarus has been like the vocal, ally of Russia in this whole process.
All right. Yeah. I don't see how like
I'm confused. It's like
Putin had come out and like declared him like an enemy of the state, basically.
right,
I
and
think
you're
even like
one
charges had gone against him.
right. The one other country
they're
that's
like-
your friend right now is going to hold your enemy.
Right.
I'm really confused on that part too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, like of trying to figure what the backroom negotiations of this was.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
like, okay, you're not going to do an armed uprising because you guys are highly skilled, like hired, prisoners, basically people that just don't give a fuck at all.
right.
It's, kind of like their newest campaign of recruiting people into the Wagner Group. Have gotten, have had multiple accusations in other parts of the world of, atrocities.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. Like, it's just fucking crazy.
Because I saw one thing they were talking about, a base that was getting built in Belarus, but then other intelligence had come out that they haven't seen anything of them building a base. I mean, if he's there, where's he bringing his army? His army was with him at some point. Did he split off from his army, or is
well, apparently, like a bunch of
his army going to sit there?
A bunch of them either been detained or pulled into the actual Russian military.
And that was part of what I'd read, that I guess the Kremlin, whoever had come down and basically said, anyone fighting for Russia had until like July 1st to like sign contracts saying, that you were fighting with us.
Right.
And that was like one of his sticking points.
You're either going to be in our army or you're going to die. Which one do you want?
Well, not that you're going to die, but I'm not quite sure what the precipice was for
Siberia. I don't know what do you do. Like, I'm pretty sure it's a very limited choice. It's either we're gonna throw you back on the front lines because that's where you were anyway, and either you're gonna do it with us or we're gonna kill you. That's kind of my take.
I don't think it was necessarily like an either or. Russia, I'm sure was very glad to have them fighting on their side.
Well, they're paying for them, so it's a mercenary group
in a sense, yeah. Yeah, and then how all that financial kind of backing goes.
Yeah, I don't fucking understand it either. It's crazy. It's what it is. It's craziness.
Maybe we did similar things with Blackwater in Afghanistan.
Sure.
It's like, you're not really with us, but you're fighting with us. Okay.
Right. Well,
we're going to pay you a hell of a lot more than we're paying our soldiers.
Right. Because you can do shit that we can't do, technically. Because we're just telling you to do... Here's your objective. How you reach that objective doesn't have to follow the rules that we were required to follow. So here's your objective. Bye. It's easier that way.
Right.
Less questions.
Which I have seen one report of... that was one of the concerns of the Wagner Group bringing in, literally going to prisons and getting out like highly dangerous people. And they're like, hey, we'll commute your sentence if, you'll sign on to, 6 months of war fighting. And there was somebody that did their 6 months, went back to, I think it was like Estonia or something. And at one point was found like menacing with a pitchfork, like threatening people. And then like within like a couple weeks, they were found to have killed like a family of people.
Nice. Yeah. So the real psychos. Well, you just need to keep them on the front line. Like this is what you're good at.
That's not what they promised them. They promised them like, hey, you do 6 months of fighting, well, you're now free. We'll let you go back to being a person.
A really fucking crazy one.
Right.
Which we know you are, but we don't know what to do with you.
Was already serving, like 3 life sentences.
That's fine.
But hey, you did 6 months of fighting. Now you can go back to you're cool. You fought for us. We appreciate it.
I don't know. It's not okay. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not trying to justify it or whatever. Right. But I could see I could follow the premise when you need bodies for an action. I could follow the logic,
right,
on why you would do the thing.
I would promise amnesty.
But
it's
come
hard
and fight and might. But I can leave you in this box that you don't want to be in. You don't want to be in this box. This box sucks. I can leave you in this box, and then I know you're not going to do that awful atrocity back in your home village. Because I know you're going to do an atrocity back in your home village if I let you back there. But I have this major issue over here, which, technically you're pretty good at doing some atrocious shit over here. Go over there, do that atrocious shit over there, and then I'll let you go home. And then I have to weigh out the value of, well, you're going to do the atrocious shit when you get back home, or I don't have your skill set. I can see the logic in taking the skill set in the action.
I can't see granting amnesty. I could see maybe knocking off like 5 years for doing like a year of service or something.
Well, 3 lifetimes. Come on, what's 5 years? I would say no. Like if I'm the guy in the box, I'm gonna say no. I'm not doing shit for you.
I'd say it might serve in life. I don't think I would grant them amnesty.
I'm just saying. I'm going.
I think that would then just show that
the reality is like how bad does Putin need that?
Right. As I was about to say, is that's showing that level of disparity,
right,
or desperation.
Right. Exactly. How bad do we need that?
Right.
We need it. We need it. We need it. And I'm willing to sacrifice some of my citizens for it.
Right, but the Russian military hasn't done that. I guess they've just invited the Wagner Group to do this.
On their behalf. It's the same thing. I mean, realistically.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, it's a you've got a set of pawns and you got a rook and you got a bishop and you got a knight.
Right.
Well, the knight can do things the pawns can't.
Yeah, but it's not the guy that the Wagner Group guy wanted out of power, who I think was like over this Ukrainian.
Right, the Minister of War or whatever the fuck title is.
Prigozhin, I think. But now there's some other guy that's been detained that apparently may have had some ties or maybe some closeness to this.
Right, there's a guy. Yeah,
Prigozhin, I think is.
I mean, here's the
Wagner
game. I
Group
mean, the game at play here is what is our interest? Like realistically, what is our interest? Why are we really like I don't want to go down this rabbit hole all the way, but
What should we care?
like realistically for me and you, it doesn't change anything. But for at least the U.S. government's mindset is the mortal enemy that is Putin. The only win here for the U.S. is that Putin loses, and the only way Putin loses is if Putin loses power. I mean, that's the reality at play. To me, I disagree with it functionally, morally.
I don't think the end game is to have Putin lose power.
I do. For the Washington subset of people,
and maybe
I do.
just to simply show Putin that no, he can't start a war and take over territories that have international boundaries.
Either
that
way,
have been established.
if it's not for the quote unquote regime change, it's for at least the put him in check. I'll agree with you that it may not be for the full regime change. It's to put him in full check. Like you don't have control over the situation. We do. I mean, okay, I'll agree with that.
It's just like this we in this. That I think it's just that he doesn't.
It's we. It's we. It's the NATO we. It's the we have control over the situation. You're not allowed to do things that we don't want you to do, and we're going to make sure that you pay for that.
I don't think it's so much as we. It's just something that a sovereign nation should not do in general, and that there are repercussions.
Well, and we decide on what the rules are for sovereign nations, kind of shit. What
the fuck is this like we bullshit you're talking about here?
We made up the lines. We made up this, that, and the other. It's the big royal we that is at play all the time. And we, the West, get to decide what's going on in the Eastern European places that you don't get to do what you want to do. We've decided how we want this to. We, the West, have decided how we want this to end, and we want this to end with Ukraine being the sovereign nation, even in the generous version.
Because when those lines were drawn, Russia didn't accept those.
I don't know.
They didn't agree to those.
I don't know that they did.
So no, it was just the West that decided where the lines were drawn.
I don't know. I don't know.
Russia had no part. They were just a fucking pawn.
I mean,
the West just made them capitulate.
They might be a rook in the chess game of this conversation. I don't know, but the point is that it's whether it's regime change officially or at least a check on Putin saying you can't do whatever you want to do. Because that's the way we're treating this. It's like this, because apparently we knew about it. Like the U.S. intelligence knew that this Prigozhin character was going to do the coup and didn't mention it. I don't know whether they should have or not.
What are you talking about?
They were aware of this coup happening before it did.
Who was?
The U.S. intelligence.
Was aware that he was going to go rogue?
Yeah.
Where the fuck are you reading this shit?
I'm making it up. You're right.
No, I'm asking you where have you read this?
I made it up.
I'm not saying you've made it up. I'm just wondering what you've read on this
that
leads you to believe this is a true fact.
I want to say it was Washington Post, but I'm not exactly sure what the reference was on my podcast. I do not recall, but it was Washington Post, New York Times, one of those. That intelligence said that they were aware of it before it happened. And they decided that it was not in, that they didn't think it was appropriate to make any comment on it before it happened. Which I don't know. I don't know how to play that. Like, I don't know how I'd play that if I was in their position either.
I mean, we've got many of ears in many places.
You're right.
So,
That's the point. It's like if our CIA is doing what it's supposed to do, we should have known the shit. Like, we certainly knew the shit.
Well, I mean, I think anyone that's read like some of the stories, after the Putin chef, Prigozhin, whatever, bitched about not having ammunition, that there was a level of animosity at some point with, this private military group versus, the Russian forces. But I don't know if it had gone so far as, tracking intelligence.
I mean, people are compromised.
Say,
people know, and there are people talking to people that they're not supposed to be talking to on both sides of this game. There are people that are close enough to Putin that are telling U.S. assets something.
I don't know.
It's fucking crazy. But again, you're right.
I could say we may have had some intelligence of some discourse, but as far as us having intelligence of
there's questions on whether
he's
we
probably
had
going to march on Moscow.
There's questions on whether or not we had anything to do with it. There's questions on. I think we knew. I think I wouldn't see why we wouldn't know. There's got to be somebody in Prigozhin's inner circle.
Biden came out and straight up said we had nothing to do with this.
Sure.
Just to try to, I guess.
I mean, I would too if I were Biden,
thought.
whether I did or didn't know.
Right.
I mean, I'd be like, this has nothing to do with us. We had nothing to do with this.
I don't think we have the power to influence someone that was that close to Putin to be like, oh, you need to march on Moscow.
I'm trying to figure out what the leverage would be to get him to do it. Like, what leverage could we possibly have to be like, you need to do this, or we'll tell them you're working with us? Well, that's as bad as us.
I mean, I would say with some of the work they've done, I would say there's probably some international criminal courts looking at war crimes of what they've done in Africa and et cetera.
Well, sure, but that's against. But you're also going like, okay, yeah, we can pull a war crimes tribunal on you, or you can deal with what Putin's going to do to you if he finds out what you're trying to do. Like, where's the threat? The threat is you're dead either way, and not in a good way.
Right.
None
of this makes sense. I don't. Yeah, again, they went into a Russian ally, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, we're going to give him safe haven here," and the Kremlin's already said that we're not going to, criminally prosecute him for crimes against the state, essentially.
Right.
Inciting an uprising.
Your sales pitch is, we'll bring you to Miami, and you can do coke until you fucking die.
Right.
Or, I don't know. That's the carrot. What's the stick? I mean, there's no stick here. It's like, you're going to die. You're going to fucking die for what you're going to do.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be,
But if you pull it off, we'll put you in Miami with cocaine.
It's those mysterious, poisoning operations that happen.
Yeah, I don't fucking fuck.
He was found at a park with an apparent, heart attack.
Right. He was driving his car, and all of a sudden it accelerated into a tree. Oh, what else we got? We got something else. What's going on local-ish? So all this shit the Tennessee legislature did this year on the big flashy issues is dead, which I find hilarious.
Such as
all the trans drag stuff, all that shit got murdered.
Right.
Because it was like Missouri or Kansas or something like that had a very similar bill about.
There was a Florida one that just got dismissed as far as their drag bill.
No, the one I'm talking about it's the affirmative care for youth.
Oh yeah.
It was Missouri or something like that had a similar one, and that got struck down.
Yeah.
And
I don't think Tennessee's has.
It hasn't been officially struck down, but it's been struck down there. It was a federal Supreme Court struck it down.
Right.
And so, essentially, it's dead here too. Right? I'm sorry, the state Supreme Court struck it down there. It's not a federally And so I think whatever state that happened in is rolling it up to federal, and so we're going to get that in the federal Supreme Court sooner than later.
Possibly.
On whether it's a constitutional issue. And so that one's going to get killed. So the only one that, the only major bill to me that's passed is that tomorrow, actually, now that I think about it, have to figure out how to collect taxes on, I'm not sure what, but I have to collect extra taxes on stuff. But I've already got it all set up. It'll take me about 30 seconds.
Okay.
To flip the switch. We've been collecting 0% taxes on it for 2 or 3 days now. I just have to change it to that 6%. Which is going to get fucking weird. Fuck. Okay. All right. So, legally speaking, in your opinion, not that you're a lawyer, but legally speaking, in your opinion, because like it, as I was jokingly saying, like I got to start collecting this tax, and I'm not sure on what. You know, so if anybody has ever looked at their receipts when they buy shit, it's like it's $9.99, and you go down your receipt, and then there's on the bottom of your receipt it's $9.99, and then 9.25% in sales tax, and then you pay $10.92 or whatever the actual total is, $10.91 for the thing, right? So if I pay if I turn this tax on, and the Department of Agriculture hasn't defined officially what is appropriate to be taxed. If I turn this tax on, and the Department of Revenue says, well, the Department of Agriculture hasn't defined it yet, so you shouldn't be collecting this tax. Or, like, I don't, like you know what I'm saying? Like, you get my confusion here?
Right.
And so I collect this tax. I'm not allowed to keep it. I can't give it back to the people that gave it to me. But the state doesn't deserve it either. Like, what happens to that money? What am I supposed to do?
What do you mean the state doesn't deserve it?
Because they haven't defined what I'm supposed to collect the tax on. Like, so essentially, though, like anybody who's in any sort of retail, the computer system, you can create your own taxes. Any of these companies that create your point of sale, they create a software system and a hardware system to do the job. And, you know, they have people that know what's going on and say, oh, you're a company in the state of Tennessee, sales tax is 9.25%. And so they pre-program that in, but you can add your own, you know, and so like, because what I did in preparation is I added a 0% sales tax to all the things that I think that this thing should apply to. So then tonight, after we close, rephrase, tomorrow before we open, I'm going to go and change that 0% to 6%. Well, what if, you know, a handful of things that I applied this to aren't applicable? And I end up collecting, I don't know, $100 in taxes that aren't applicable properly. That would be fraud as fuck if I were to keep that money. But it's also not the state's money, and I can't give it back to the people that I collected it from. What am I supposed to do? So,
do exactly what you're doing. Is you're doing your best valiant effort to pay towards what you believe is applicable.
Right, but I'm just saying, it's like the state has not defined what I'm supposed to do yet, and so I'm guessing. Like, I know that that topicals don't count. So, like, creams, any CBD creams that are out there, they don't count. I know they don't count. But, like, CBD proper, I don't know if it counts or not. But I've applied it to it. And so there are people who are going to come into our shops and they're going to buy a CBD gummy and pay 15.25% tax on it. But they're only supposed to pay 9.25%. And it is not clearly defined by the state of Tennessee yet whether I'm supposed to or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
And so what do I do, though? Because I'm going to collect this money because I want to, like, because, I mean, to me, who would I rather fuck over? And this is the reality of my conundrum. Who would I rather accidentally fuck over?
The government?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Like personally, yes. Like on a moral, philosophical
That's
level,
what I figured.
yes, 100%. But like on a practical business level, I'd rather fuck over you, the consumer, accidentally, than I would the state of Tennessee Department of Revenue. Because I fuck them over, they're gonna fuck me hard. Where I fuck you over is whatever. Nothing's gonna happen to me. I mean, you could try to sue me, I guess, but it's gonna be like 35 cents.
Right, but it's nothing that you've kept.
But I might. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? That's the point. It's like, okay, so I go through this thing. I did all this thing to prep for it because I don't know the right answer. But the right answers come in through the time. Well, I've already collected from you. Again, it's only pennies, maybe $1. It's not a bunch of money, but I'm collecting from you.
All right.
But I'm collecting that on the precipice, on the presumption that it's a tax.
Just glad you tried to use precipice.
Yeah, fuck that.
Incorrect.
Shut up. Fish drive.
No, I did it earlier today. I was
I'm just saying,
trying to use,
like
I was trying to use it as like the preceding point of something that preceded something, and I was like precipice, and I'm like,
But I mean, it's like
looked it up. I was like, I totally use that word.
I guess my point is, again, like we've talked for a hot minute tonight about how much people don't understand about what's going on with their governments and shit like that. It's like, what an easy little fraud game I could play. I could easily, with my knowledge of what we sell and what the law actually is, I could easily apply a tax that doesn't actually exist to a number of items. And when people say, what's this? It's, that's a tax the state of Tennessee put in place. I could easily do that. And then just collect an extra 6% here or there. Nickels and dimes. Still
Well, how does the alcohol tax work? Do we not pay does the consumer not pay an added?
Yes, 15% added over the 9.25. You pay 25 cents on the dollar for a shot of liquor. It's intense. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like I always thought it was 15% flat. It was 9.25 plus 5 3/4.
I always forget about going to like Pigeon Forge. You have that like luxury tax. It's like an added like 4 or 5% of you just being in a popular area and want to spend some money.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, again, it's like it opens the door. Like the whole premise of this hemp tax was consumer protection. And I'm thinking to myself right now, if I was a shady business guy who was already selling like questionably legal marijuana adjacent products, I would go out of my way to make sure that my shit's technically legal. And I'd put it at 7%, 7.5% in my computer system. Because you're not going to know the fucking difference when you're buying it. And I would use the state to make up the difference in what I'm going to lose for my shady shit on the other side. Like, it feels to me like it's a wide open door. Like, I could be super fraudulent with this. I'm not. Let me be clear. I'm trying my best to be as correct as I can on this.
As far as like funneling an added tax into your own...
Because I can apply it. Like, I can apply it to anything I want on the computer system. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to notice it. And the one time you do, the staffer is not going to know how to answer that question. And they're like, I don't know. It just says it's whatever tax. Like, I could just add it. I could create a nicotine tax, whole cloth.
Right. I mean, there's a plethora of things you could do to fuck people over that most people wouldn't realize. Not even just in like the retail setting, but I don't see what your point is. Like,
the lack of definition is why it makes it easy. There is no definition. Like, I don't know. Like, I legitimately don't know if a CBD gummy is supposed to be taxed or not.
Right.
Like, I don't know that. And I've set it up to do so. And I haven't set it up to do so as in fraudulent sense to make me extra money. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm thinking to myself, well, if I was a shitbag, I would do it on purpose as a way to make extra money.
How are you making extra money if you're paying that to the state?
I'm not going to pay it to the state. I'm only going to pay the state what the state actually wants me to add the tax to. Okay. And I'm just going to tell the customer that the state says I have to tax you for this. And I'm just going to take that extra 6% and put it in my pocket. the lack of clear definition is what the problem is. Is the lack of clear definition gives me the ability, if I'm paying attention, to defraud you, the customer, because you don't know, nor should you, realistically. But since the state isn't clear on it, I could play that game. Like none of my tincture, like or none of the topicals or the dog, like because again, like dog and cat stuff, it is not clear. It's not clearly defined at all. I made the decision that dog and cat stuff is not under the special tax category. I don't know that for a fact, right. And so I might pay extra money to the state. I might actually accidentally be defrauding the state in the process. And so there's part of me that's like, well, I'm going to tax it everything because I'm going to be right. I'm going to be right according to the state, and fuck you, the consumer.
Right.
And so I'm very distraught over this process because as soon as we end taping right now, I got to turn on these taxes. I mean, legitimately, it starts tomorrow.
All right.
What's my dog doing? It's so hilarious. Oh,
I was trying to figure out what the hell he was chewing on.
Hey, come here.
I've never seen a.
It's just a rope ring.
I've never seen like
there
a rope ring.
He got it. He figured it out.
Like, what the fuck is he chewing on?
So submarines with remote controls. What else are we talking about?
Taxes.
Anyway, what do you got, man? It's time for the most important part of the show.
Shit. The
hook. Why we keep people here. Let me ask you a question. All right, before you get while you're doing that or whatever, on a truly personal level.
Shit. What you want?
Do you feel like this podcast may hurt our relationship?
A little bit.
Really? Okay. It scares me. I don't like that. It's not my goal. I like talking shit. But I don't like you're more important than the show is. I don't want to fuck you and me up for the sake of the show. It scares me. Like, it concerns me. Like I get in my crazy fucking whatever mode and you get like you look at me in a way and I'm like, I don't like that.
Am I looking at you like that now?
No, you're giving me the wrinkly fucking old man smile that you got.
Thought you said I looked young and
you've got some what do they called, the smile creases or whatever they're called in the eyeballs.
Crow's feet.
Yeah, they're massive, but whatever. I don't give a shit, man. You're fucking. How old's your dad?
You have like bags under my eyes.
How old's your dad?
I think he'll be 68 this year.
It's been a couple minutes since I've seen your dad. But if your dad told me he was 50, I'd believe him if I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so you're in the same fucking boat.
He's definitely lived a better life than I have, though.
So big ol', what are you talking about?
He never drank or smoked.
Your dad doesn't booze at all?
No. I think he'll do like the occasional like champagne or something, but yeah, he doesn't drink.
No.
Never smoked, even though one of his brothers did, and his parents did. But he never smoked a cigarette.
I'm not buying that as the argument. It's a genetic game, dude.
That's part of it, but I think also, you see people that have smoked for years, and like
sure,
it definitely like ages them.
Sure. I'll tell you what, like I've seen some dudes with their fucking yellow mustaches. God damn, that grosses me out. I'm so glad I don't smoke anymore.
You don't notice it until they get like the white hairs, and it's like, oh wait, you got so yellow nasty. Right under your nostrils.
Oh, fucking God, that's so nasty. Oh, I'm so glad I don't smoke anymore for that. I won't. I'm not going to sit here and advocate that vaping is significantly better or whatever, but at least you don't have that. Because as long as I've smoked vape,
now you just got a sticky residue around,
dude,
everything that you're in.
Oh man, like I've caught myself like sitting down here working, doing some computer shit, and I'll have my vape on, and like my screen's got a little splatter on it. Like I can just see the splatter on my screen from where I've exhaled, and it's blown through my mustache and blown off the. I got it. But I like my mustache is a mess. Like I can't figure out what I'm doing. Like I want to grow it out enough that I can comb it and get it to pull aside, but I'm not going to put product in it regularly enough to keep it like waxed. But I don't like it short either. Like I'm stuck.
that aspect of it almost has to be like the corners, because I mean you're not brushing that middle area.
No,
far.
I'm pretty sure that when you get into the serious mustache game, that stuff that's right under your nostril is long enough that it's part of the push to the sides. You're not always cutting that super short. Like there's people that have like the mustache.
I mean, I haven't been able
that's
to
right there in the center. That center mustache thing is long enough that if there's no product in it, they're pulling that down all the way to their chin.
I mean, what mine like curls when it gets a little bit longer, or only like the edges.
Right, naturally.
Naturally.
I'm just saying that, but the center, if you got it waxed up right and did the whole thing, it'll go out there as one unit and curl. I'm telling you, man. Like there's dudes that are serious about their mustaches that if they don't put product in it or whatever, that shit comes down to their chin. They have no mouth.
Yeah, I don't think hair is meant to be like brushed that far over that is that short and coarse.
Oh, it'll do it if you make it do it.
Yeah, I guess.
It's got that memory. No, wrong button. Let's stick with the wrong button. I'm just going to own it.
Found this crazy. I guess South Korea just changed their national laws. They had a traditional, I guess, calendar that they used that they legally just changed nationally, that when you were born, you automatically started out at 1 year old. But then I think they gave the example that if you were born on December 31st, you would then be like 2 years old, technically, on January 1st. So you almost kind of had like this like natural age versus like historical, like traditional age.
Okay.
It was basically the story that a bunch of like Koreans, after they, I guess, finally approved this change nationally, that everyone
I don't know.
got to go back like a year or two.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
Apparently China does it as well.
You are the number of years you've been alive. Period.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it was traditional that when you were born, you were started like year one, I guess.
You started at year 0.
At first I thought
and
maybe
when
it was
the calendar year changed to year 1, you changed to year 1.
Basically, yeah.
That's dumb.
Is that you started out year
one. The original
one,
was dumb. I don't
and
understand.
then
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Going off of their traditional calendar, you
Like that-
automatically went another year.
Yeah, on a very random subtangent of that, it's like the idea of Anthony wanted to hire people in the middle of the month, so that their 2-week training period ended on the first of the month.
Yeah.
So that the whole process of the 60-day probationary period as a new employee would be on a month-to-month basis. Like, no, fuck, I don't care. We'll do weird math. That's stupid. You start when you start. You're born when you're born. That doesn't make any sense. You are 0. And then a year past your 0 date is 1. That's dumb.
Yeah, at first I thought maybe it was like a gestational thing. That maybe they started going back like 9 months from your actual birth date or whatever. But even that wouldn't necessarily be accurate.
That'd be a really fun caveat in the fucking abortion conversation. But I mean, that's, actually, I say that as an aside, but that would be a good argument to have with a pro-life person. Is, how old are you? I'm 40. You're 40 plus 9 months, bro. Where are we in the calendar? You might be 41. If life begins at conception, then that's your birthday, not the day you came out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, pro-life people are weird. Just saying. Pro-choice people are weird, too, in their own subset of things, but
I think I did see that, like, Pence had came out and was advocating for, like, trying to reach a middle ground, like a 16-week abortion ban or something like that, nationally.
Nah. I haven't heard that, but he's not. He's not winning with that.
Possibly.
No, he's not. There's no fucking chance. Trump's got that fucking nomination wrapped up, even if he's indicted again.
Yeah.
There's no way. Like, DeSantis is the only one that has a minor chance. And the problem is, and this is the real problem. This is going back to what we were talking about earlier. The real problem. Don't close it. Keep the next news of the weird up. I'm going to be quick. The real problem is that DeSantis is further right on issues that the country at large is not than Trump is. That is the problem with the system. Period. Trump's a bad candidate. The best other candidate to Trump is wrong on all of it. Because the only way it can differentiate itself is being worse than. And it's gross, and it's nasty, and we're fucked. Anyway. Bring the fire.
I ain't got some fire.
Bring the fire. Come on. It's
all right,
Photoman shit. Come on.
That's a Maine woman. Maine woman punches bear that chased her dog and ends up with stitches. Maine woman.
The dog or the woman?
The woman.
Okay.
Maine woman was bitten by a bear in her backyard while defending her pet dog, necessitating a trip to the hospital for stitches.
That is why headlines are important. The way you write a headline is important. That's the summation of this story.
That was the headline. Maine woman punches bear that chased her dog and ends up with stitches. There was no allusion to the dog having stitches.
The bear could have got stitches.
Sure.
I'm just saying. There's options.
I think it's pretty fucking
There's options for who got stitches there. When you first read that, my assumption was the bear got stitches.
How?
Because she punched the bear so hard it needed stitches.
It starts out with the main focus. Maine woman punches bear that chased her dog and ends up with stitches. I don't think there's really any ambiguity that the dog nor the bear got stitches.
It's gangster that she punched bear. You're right.
You have your main focal point of the sentence itself is a Maine woman punches bear and ends up with stitches.
That's gangster shit. Good for her.
Yeah.
She's a national hero. What's her name?
Lynn Kelly. 64.
Gangsta. Double gangsta. Get it, girl. I love it. That makes me happy.
With a black bear.
Of course it was. It's a Maine. What other kind of bear would it be other than a black bear?
True. Could have been, an escaped brown bear from a sanctuary.
Some random Maine grizzly bear sanctuary.
Yeah.
We made a show. We did what we do. We're back to it. Hopefully back to normal schedule, doing the normal things. Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. Eventually, we'll do a Voter Guide 23. Actually, I don't know anymore. I'm debating on whether I'm going to bother. Nobody gives a shit. I mean, they really don't do anything anyway. If you would get right down to it, nothing important matters as far as city government goes. I just went into a dark place. I apologize. Not kidding. I kid people. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. almostagreement.com is the website. Go to your favorite podcast provider. Like, friend, share, follow those things there. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. You keep doing you. Shoot us emails on almostagreement.com. We'll respond as best we can to what you guys have to say. And we'll talk to you guys later. Good night, everybody.